All right, we did it. We did it. We did it. We got here. What a crazy weekend, dude. What a crazy weekend I just experienced. Just like busy day after busy day after busy day, like crazy, crazy day. Like, I feel like, I don't feel like, over the last like 3 days, I think I must have spoken to like 2,000 people, maybe more. Yeah, probably more. God, yeah, actually, I'm like doing the numbers in my head right now. I probably spoke to like 2,500 people, maybe more. Just like getting people through a line, man. Getting people through a line. That's cafe work for you, man. That's how it goes. Holy shit. Ugh, and I'm just like, boo. And while I was doing it, like, yeah, another week, and I got another work day. I got another capitalist work day tomorrow too, Nova Scotia. So that's how it is. That's just how it is. Everything's capitalism is just generating crisis after crisis, as it does, right? As it does, and it's just the people, the workers are the ones that eat it, right? The workers are the ones that eat it every single time, and the like I don't I had a day, man. I had a day where like I was on like an emotional roller coaster, and it really reminded me, you know. And I really had a talk with a friend about it. Like, you know, we like to pretend like, well, I'm in control. I know what I'm doing. Everything's fine. I'm doing the, you know, I'm here, and I can make good decisions and operate and all that kind of stuff. And it was just like that day. It was like absolutely not the case at all. Like I straight up was on like this emotional roller coaster of like falling into a state of depression and then suddenly feeling okay and then getting very angry and then just like the gamut of emotions. And while I'm dealing with these like emotions as they're swirling up and down and going over and all of this, I have to like serve customers. It's crazy. Like, it's absolutely crazy what we are and who humans are and what we do and how we live and exist in the world. Nova Scotia, my work is changing, bosses really screwing up. Dude, Nova Scotia, man, I'm going to talk about this because it's so emblematic of, like, why capitalism fails and why it's so fucking stupid and ridiculous and why the idea of giving a small group of rapacious sociopaths, or just a small group of anybody. Why giving literally any person? Forget about the sociopath line. Like, why giving literally a single person an enormous sum of money is a completely terrible idea. And I'm just going to tell the story, dude, of the new owners that came in and fucked everything up at my work. Like, my work is a restaurant slash cafe in a historical site in the Evergreen Brickworks, right? I feel like I do very excellent work there. My entire task is to make sure that the place is nice and clean and everything's organized, and that when people come in, they feel like they were better off having talked to me than not. And I'm really, really fucking good at it. Like, I'm really, really fucking good at it. And any capitalist type that wants to denigrate service work is just a loser in my mind. Just like literally a loser. Just somebody who is like doesn't respect their mother, doesn't respect the work of cleaners or janitors or the, you know, and yet continuously uses these services. But says to the people who are saying like, hey, this should actually, we should be able to pay our rent with this work. They go, you just need to find a better job. And then if we all do go find better jobs, they all just go, nobody wants to work anymore. So they're just gaslighting losers. And I'm working this job, and there was the establishment was being run by a 4-star chef, like a 4-star Michelin chef who really was like, I want to make a high quality product. Everything's organic. Everything's really nice. Everything's really beautiful. but it's sort of out of step with what the Evergreen Brickworks actually is. But the Evergreen Brickworks it's a family place. It's where a lot of families show up. Like there's a lot of family organization. There's a lot of like, families coming in being like, hey, do you have any like chicken fingers and fries is really what they're looking for. And this chef is like, I have a Soussan with the drizzle chamonix and the side of the juguba, like, so it's like nice for like a very tiny little group of people who live in the area. But really, like, I see like 1,000 kids a day, maybe even more, and it's like, we should be serving those kids. And so new owners took the place over, and the new owners came in and they like chased management out. It was the first thing that they did. So already it's like these capitalists who have no, hey, that guy, how you doing, bud? These capitalists came in, good to see you. They came in and they had no restaurant experience whatsoever. Their background is pharmaceuticals, right? Their background is pharmaceuticals. Watson, good to see you. And they come in like Dick's wagon with these like big ideas about what they want to do to this establishment and how they want to do this. And the first thing, and when they come in with their ideas and their thoughts, management, like good people who I worked with for a year, right? We're like, okay, that's what you want to do. So here are the things that we're going to have to do to plan these things and do all this kind of stuff. And they literally got pushed out of the establishment for saying to these guys, hey, we should probably move forward with a plan, right? We should probably plan and actually like plan for these changes that you're having. And then the owners didn't care for that they just wanted to do things, right? And the big idea that one of these owners in particular, I won't name names, one of these owners in particular had was, we're going to change this into a wine bar. We're going to change this into a wine bar, right? So we're going from like a fine dining / retail establishment to a wine bar. Here's the problem. And the second you know anything about the Evergreen Brickworks, you realize very quickly that a wine bar is going to fail because there's no transit that goes to the Evergreen Brickworks after 7 o'clock, 6:30 actually, to get to it. So you can't actually get to the Evergreen Brickworks unless you drive. And so what you're fundamentally telling people is, you gotta drive down here or take a taxi in order to come see our wine bar, right, with our fine wine dining and all of this kind of stuff, and then pay for a cab to go home or drive home. It's like a failure from the outset, just on paper. Just on paper. If you wrote it all down and you were like, this is my plan, right? Unwittingly championing drunk driving, absolutely. Yeah. I'll just use my chauffeur. What's the trouble? Exactly. I'll just go use my driver. What's the issue? Yeah. Like, no, and like, if you write it all down, you realize very, very quickly how fucking stupid it is. So, like, and they committed to this wine bar idea. They ripped out all of our retail space. They changed everything. They moved us all around. They bought thousands of bottles of wine, like, and some of them very high quality, high expensive wine. They put all of this stuff in. It failed spectacularly, right? Then while this was going on, because they pushed out the other managers, the people who we had been working with the entire time, they recognized very quickly, oh, we don't know what we're doing in terms of like how to negotiate this business, and we actually do need a manager, like somebody who's actually gonna, but they're thinking we want somebody who's responding to us. So they bring in somebody else in, and now what they're doing is basically changing everything back to the way it was, because the other thing is such a fucking huge, spectacular failure. And the entire time I'm looking at it and I'm going, oh, so how much money did these guys waste doing this? How much money did these guys waste on this ridiculous idea that was doomed to failure on paper from day one, that could have gone to literally anything else? And this is why having anyone with an extravagant amount of money who is permitted to just do what they like with it is a stupid idea. Because once you get to that amount of wealth, once you get to that amount of money where you feel like you don't need to actually respond to the people who are around you, such as the people who are actually doing the job and working in the space, once you get to that point, you can just sort of make decisions based on a conception, on an idea that exists in the atmosphere. Like, oh, I'd love it if there was like this wine bar, and oh, it's so the vision of the future in the place with the, and oh my goodness, and all these ideas. But if you're not like willing, and if somebody comes up to you and says, oh, okay, well, here's the issues with that, and you just go, well, I don't want to hear that, and you have so much money that it doesn't matter, you can just push them out of the conversation, then when the whole thing hits the fucking brick wall, right? Well, and the worst part about it is that when the whole thing hits the fucking brick wall, you've got so much money that you just get to go, oh, well, and walk away, leaving everybody else to pick up the pieces from the mess that you created, which is basically what's happening. It's just staggering to watch happen in real time. Like, just fucking staggering to watch this happen in real time. Right in front of me. Like, right in front of me. I'm, like, watching these just, like, step by step by step by step. Capitalism is a failure, and it's obvious, and it's right in front of my eyes right now. And it's like, I'm trying to get another job, but I'm just like, it's probably like this all over. Right? It's probably like this everywhere you go. You know, you go everywhere, and it's just this dumb fuckery. Constantly just rich people showing up, destroying everything that's in front of them, making everything shitty. Yeah, rich asshole with quote-unquote big ideas. Yeah, like Elon Musk with Twitter. Although, one thing that is coming out of Twitter, and I should mention it, that I have to say I actually feel is a positive overall, is that the Twitter files have really shown, and the Twitter files wouldn't have gotten released if not for Elon Musk's chicanery, and the Twitter files are really revealing that there was like a merger that had happened between the United States State Department and Twitter. That the United States State Department wasn't like suggesting things or saying to people, or saying to Twitter people, like, these would be our preferences. They literally were saying, like, ban this person, we don't want to see this person anymore. And Twitter was going, you got it, absolutely, yep. There was, like, no air between the two of them whatsoever. That the previous owners of Twitter might actually be facing, like, a pretty significant First Amendment challenge, and the Biden administration as well, because the whole argument was like, well, Twitter can ban people, that's completely fine. Twitter can ban people, that's completely fine, because they're a private organization. They're a private organization. But if they're banning people on behest of the United States government, that's a major First Amendment problem. It's a major First Amendment problem. King Matthew, have I ever seen you around here before, King Matthew? I don't know if I have or haven't, but God bless you for being here, bud. Where's your scientific data? Yeah. Good to see you, Cotton. Don't mess around with the demolition, man. That's fucking right. Yeah, I got fired because of a mistake my manager made. Yeah, that kind of shit happens all the time. Right? I've had people fire me because I literally had a guy fire me because I refused to let him steal from me. Like, straight up. And, like, there's just, I've seen total bullshit happen to people, dude. Like managers will always, like, you gotta cut the budget. It's like, oh, well, they're not gonna take a cut in pay, right? They're gonna lay people off, is what they're gonna do. And we see that happen in capitalism all the time, right? People are getting laid off, and then big bonuses are handed out to the billionaire class, right? Hold on one second, guys. My little pug. Milo, I know you ate, dude. I know you ate. I know you ate. I know you ate food. I know you ate food, my little man. Don't try to fool me. Fiona fed you, and I know that she did, and you can't tell me that you didn't eat. You little fatty chub-chubs. You little fatty chub-chubs. My little dog, he keeps trying to trick me into getting more food, because when I have a big, long day, someone comes in and just gives him some food for me. This is very kind. But then I get home and he's like, oh, I'm so hungry, I haven't eaten at all. He thinks he can trick me and get more food and then get big and roly-poly and fat. Yes, that's right. You think you can get big and roly-poly and fat, don't you? Don't you, my little man? Do you want some treats, though? Do you want some treats? You're being such a good boy. Okay, down you go, down you go. Here's some treats, buddy. Hey, Milo, you want some treats? You want some treats? Here you go, my man. There's a good little boy. Ugh. So this is the nonsense that, like... And then also there's just simply the, like... I'm going to tell this story, even though I probably shouldn't, but this is all inside baseball. I'm not even doing the TikTok thing right now. I was chasing after a woman who works in the establishment near mine, and she had, like, recently gone through a breakup, but I was still pursuing her anyway, and she was kind of giving me some green flags, but she was also saying, like, hey, kind of slow down, and so I was like, okay. But then at one point she breaks it off, and I was like, understandable, like, she's going through this whole thing, maybe she doesn't need me putting pressure on, but maybe there'll be hope for the future. But then I find out that she's dating another guy who is kind of just like a big lump, frankly, who's just kind of like a big lump of a person. And the more I realize it, like, I had this, I've turned 40. I've turned 40. And there's this real part of me, like, I'm constantly in this state of realization of, like, oh, like, young women, and, like, I'll admit it, she's 27, which is right on the edge of, like, cool. And I sort of think to myself, maybe I shouldn't be doing that, right? Maybe I shouldn't be doing that. Maybe that's a bit odd. Maybe that's a bit creepy. But, like, it is kind of at that point where I'm recognizing that, like, oh, like, there is just a type of person who I'm, like, that I had previously been attracted to and that I previously would be pursuing, that's never going to happen again. Like, that's over, basically, for me. And that was basically what made this weekend really, really difficult. What made this weekend really, really difficult was, like, losing out on this relationship with this young woman who I thought liked me, and who I think does like me, like, as a person, but just, I think probably she just came to realize that, like, I'm too old for her. And when I kind of look at it, I kind of think to myself, yeah, like, she's probably too young for me, you know? And that, but, like, there's a difference between, like, understanding that and understanding that, and then coming to terms with that, and the emotional reality of dealing with that, you know? And realizing that, like, oh, like, getting older, like, changes things. Like, it changes things for you. And, like, I have to, like, recalibrate my expectation and reset who I am as a person. And that's, I think, what really has fucked me up more than anything, right? Is that, because I take a look at the fella that she's decided to date, and it's like, oh yeah, like, he's her age. They've known each other for much longer, I think. That even if he is a lump, right? Even if he is a lump, well, she's just recently gone through a breakup, so maybe she needs a lump, right? There's nothing wrong with any of that. And I'm certainly not blaming her. But it's the reality that, like, going through that's going through, oh, that's kind of you to say, content, like, people in their 20s that want to date older people is fine, but I just think that, like, I'm just, like, and I have to say that what it's done is it kicked me into, like, getting onto the apps again, the dating apps, like Plenty of Fish and all this kind of stuff. And I feel like I'm going to actually be kind of successful, you know? I've got a date. I've got a date for Friday. Maybe she'll back out. Who knows? I think I've got another woman who I'm pretty sure is a catfish. I'm pretty sure that if I actually showed up somewhere that she would have, like, a dagger and try to get me and steal my wallet or something. But, like, it's not like nothing is happening. It's just, I find myself in this kind of state of like, I find myself when I'm at work that I find myself constantly hoping that this other woman will come through the door. And I find myself constantly, like when I look to see if there's a lineup, I kind of find there's a little aspect of myself that it's like, I hope that she's there. And I want that to go away. I want that to go away because I don't think that it's fair for me, and I don't think it's fair for her, and I feel like it's just like, it's not like we it's not like we even kissed or anything. Like we literally had one date and like exchanged some texts and things like this. And I feel like what that is that it is me just living in this state of denial and this kind of state of self-inflicted delusion that I'm not an old man now, or a middle-aged man, if I wanted to be kind, right? That I want to believe that I want to believe that I'm always going to be, an attractive person to people of that of that kind of thing, but it's not true, and it's just never going to be true, and that it makes sense that it wouldn't be the case. So I have to kind of just accept that, I just have to accept that and move on. And so I'm not like looking to see her because of her. I'm projecting my own fear of getting old onto her. And that if she were to suddenly turn around and say, oh, okay, let's date, it would be like, oh, okay, it's all okay. It's all okay. It never mattered. It's not that I'm old. It's not any of that kind of stuff. But it's there, and it's true, and it's real. And I have to accept it. And I'm really struggling with that. I'm really struggling to accept that. I'm really struggling to accept it. And I want to get over it. And I think just talking about it even now has been very helpful. And having polite exchanges with her, like I saw her today on the shuttle, and I was just like, hope you have a good one, and that's it, has been helpful. Growing old, man. This world. What a fucked up thing this is. Right? Forget about the government and the politics and all that kind of stuff. Just living, just being alive. What a strange, peculiar... And there's no training, and there's nowhere to go to even talk about any of this stuff outside of like a therapy session or something, which is like $50 a pop. And it's just like, there's no real way for us to get together and discuss in a serious way. Like, hey, you're getting old. You're getting older. It's going to happen. These are the things that you should expect. And all of that's okay. And all of that's okay. But because we live in this atomized capitalist society, I felt so isolated during all of it. And it feels so isolating. And I was kind of worried about talking about these things on the stream. But now that I'm doing it, I'm glad that I am, because I feel like I've never heard people talk about this on a live stream. I've never heard people talk about this kind of things, and we should, goddammit. We should be discussing death and life and growing old and all of these things as openly as possible all of the time, because it's the only universal thing that we're all experiencing. That we are all getting older, and we are all going to die, and we are all living in the world, and we're all interacting with each other as we're all in different phases of our life, and there are different expectations, and none of it is discussed, and we're all just blowing up into it constantly. Boom, boom, boom. And then when things go badly, or when you're sideswiped with these sorts of realizations, you still have to fucking go to work while experiencing this just ridiculous roller coaster of emotions that you're just supposed to deal with. That you're just supposed to deal with, and some people don't. Some people can't. Like, I genuinely had a moment this weekend, and it really surprised me. I genuinely had a moment where I had to excuse myself from the floor, because if I hadn't excused myself from the floor, I was going to start yelling at people for nothing. For nothing. It was just emotions. It was just my emotional self. And it's incredible. Thanks Nova Scotia. Wait till you get 50 and 60. Yeah. 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 And it's strange. It's strange. and hopefully, and I know all of this will pass. That's the other part of it. I'm old enough now. I'm past. Right? It'll pass. And I want it to pass. And I don't want things to be, and I don't want this young lady to feel strange around me. I don't want her to feel as though I'm upset with her or frustrated. I'd like to normalize things. Be at least cordial or polite. You know? I'd like her to know, and I don't know how to communicate this, but I'd like her to know that, like, if she comes in with a problem, I'll try to solve it for her, you know? It's just also then you've got to go back on the hunt, you know? If you want to get into a relationship. And one of the things I'm really noticing is, like, how I hate these apps. I despise them. I think that these apps are horrible. I think they're horrible for us. I think they're horrible for I think they're horrible for the community, for the nation, for the people, for the soul of humanity. I don't think there's a single redeeming factor. I think that literally every aspect of these apps is an abject and total and complete failure, and we'd be better off without them. That what we should do is have a government agency set up speed dating in literally every neighborhood of every city. Just have like an established place where people come and communicate with one another. You have like a speed dating thing. So everybody who's there gets to talk to everybody who's there. And there's the understanding that you're there to meet people, to mingle, right? To do all that kind of stuff. One of the worst things about trying to talk to a woman in public, to quote unquote break the ice, is that like you get shit on. You get shit on as a man. And women don't like to hear this. Like I said this the other day in front of a couple of women who are friends of mine, and they pushed back on me pretty hard. To the point where I just was like, I'm done, I'm not gonna talk about it. Because yeah, government sponsored Mixer, absolutely. Fucking absolutely. A space where everyone can go, where it's just understood that you're there to meet people, and that if someone approaches someone else, right, that's normal. And in fact, I actually say you just literally make it speed dating. So it's like 10 people, and it's like you get 10 minutes in front of a person, and then the whistle blows or whatever happens, and then it switches. And it's just don't. And you go through that process, and at the end of the night, you like hand in a card, and numbers and things are swapped around. And I just think it would take off all of the ridiculous, like, moronic lunacy of it all. Just the stupidity of everything. They've done that already, I think, with bars. But, like, bars are not, like... The bars are not like that, right? Bars aren't like that. And people are in bars for lots of different reasons. And so that enforces this idea that if a man approaches a woman and the woman's only there to have a drink with her friend and she doesn't want to be approached by a man, she can be like, fuck off, loser. Right? And what a horrible thing to experience. What a terrible experience. I despise it. I hate it, man. It kills me. Like, why am I getting shit on because I said hello? You know, why am I getting screamed at or pushed away or made fun of? Just fucking annoying. And disheartening and demoralizing. And fucking annoying as shit. Bars are basically meat markets, but that's the thing, they're not. Like, they're not. Like, bars are like there's a million things happening in a bar. People are meeting friends. People are meeting family. People are having drinks with coworkers. People are just decide, I'm hungry and I want to walk into an establishment, right? There's all kinds of reasons. And it's not explicitly, I am here to try to meet somebody to have, like, just to even have sex with. Like, forget about a meaningful relationship. Just literally have sex with. And so for a man to go through this system, the free market deciding how to structure any of this kind of stuff, you're just constantly in this state of being shit on, right? And the apps are just fucking dehumanizing shit. Sorry, guys. My dog is literally just like whining and pining. Sit down, dude. What are you doing? What are you doing? I know I wasn't home all day, and then I came home, and then I just started talking. I know. You don't even know who I'm talking to. You don't even know who I'm talking to. Anyway. Dude, fuck the manosphere so hard, bro. Fuck the manosphere. I know for, like, I shouldn't say I know for a fact, but I was having, like, a nice chat on one of these apps, the rare occasion, and I said something about, like, the Matrix, and I was, like, referencing the Matrix, but I said it, and then she just, like, bailed on the conversation, and I thought, is that because that's, like, the manosphere? Is the Matrix the manosphere? And I, like, mentioned the Matrix, and she's just like, we're done. Like... And I think that's the other part of it, is that, like, the we're done, like, it's literally like the other person is standing there with a knife to just cut the conversation off at any moment for whatever reason. And what I think is so fucking annoying about it is like, you guys get a sense of what I'm like. I have a big presence, a big personality. I'm a very lovely and accommodating person to talk to. I feel I give a presence that is welcoming. Right? And none of that exists in these fucking dumbass apps. All of it is just I'm like making a fucking resume. That's what it is. Like, so instead of walking up to a person and being like, hey, how you doing? I hope you're having a good night. Hey, have you seen any good movies recently? What do you think about this? And like having a literal conversation with them and trying to figure something out and putting their mind at ease, right? Taking them from the state of emotion that they might be in when they're like looking at these apps. And maybe they're looking at these apps being like, argh! And you can't do anything about that. And when you're like sending them a thing, somebody just reads it as if it's sarcastic and all of this dumb bullshit. And you're literally making a resume for yourself on these stupid apps. You're like presenting yourself as if it's a workplace resume. Bread Bunny, I'm gonna get to your comments. Command Genius, Box, Hydraulic, how you doing? I'm having a pretty big decompress session right now. That's what's happening right now, right? And but they're all we've got. Dating apps are so lame, but they're all we've fucking got. And you're making a like business, like you're making a business resume for yourself to be like, and then you send a message to somebody, and maybe you have a good conversation, and then they just they're gone. They're just like gone. And maybe they're gone because something happened in their life, and the conversation that you're having, instead of it being a 10-minute conversation where you get a sense of one another, and then, because you can decide pretty fast, I think. You can get into a space with somebody and be like, yes, no, and you can do that basically right away, right? But instead, now we're going to have like a week-long conversation to get to the point of whether or not we're going to get into the room with one. Fuck the whole thing. Fuck the whole thing. This is your capitalist innovation. When really what I should be doing is I should be walking down the street to the building that is having the event that it holds every Friday, where we all walk into a room and meet one another and see what we think. And instead of it being this big, long, stretching out over space and time for forever, it would be an evening. Nope, capitalism fixed it. Capitalism did it by monetizing our need for love. Milo, dude, you can't ask to be picked up and then cry when you're picked up. My man. Yeah, apps do feel like a combo of credit check and job application. Okay, but Bread Bunny, I feel like you're writing some interesting stuff. I have a curiosity. I understand and agree with your analysis of the coming drop of the dollar. Where you want to go politics. Okay. However, I feel like most people either can't or don't want to anticipate such a thing. Can you help me in trying to break down for everyone by sharing any well-founded or at least harder to dispute resources predicting or calling for the full collapse of the dollar to post-wartime level? Like, you want a source is what you're asking for, dude. Yeah. I agree with you, though. Our society has purposely destroyed our means and skills and knowledge of how to build genuine human connection. It's grotesque. I can relate, so most people I know. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Ugh. 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 Like, no, and of course, and I think the greatest failing if you want to call it, like, I don't want to shit on feminism or any of that stuff, but it's definitely like a failing. And you know what? I'll say it this way. The manosphere and like modern day feminists are both guilty of basically taking the problems that are being dumped on them by capitalism, and blaming it on each other. That's what's happening. That's what I see over and over again, is that everybody is being inflicted by this fucking worthless capitalist system. And instead of saying, oh shit, you're like dealing with this ridiculous capitalist system, and that's like why things are the way they are, and binding together and saying, oh, we have like a common problem as men and women. Instead of that, the manosphere guys are like, bitches be crazy. Bitches be crazy. And women are like, men are mean and the patriarchy. And it's like, no, you guys are both being destroyed by a system of capital. Like, you have a common enemy. A pretty clear common enemy. But it's in the interest of the ruling class to perpetuate this shit. So manosphere stuff gets like sent all over the place. And like, think about like somebody like one of the manosphere guys, what's his name? Snecko? Right? Snecko or Sneeko or whatever his stupid name is. Like, if it wasn't for these apps just obviously elevating him and obviously being like, this is the guy we're going to put forward, right? This will be the face of the manosphere or whatever. Like, and I feel like the same thing is true with like somebody like Andrew Tate. That just like, we're gonna put this guy in the discourse to like really send it forward. Like, oh, I am not having a chill day, Santora. I am having the opposite of a chill day. I am having a real bitch session about my life, not about capitalism per se, and I should get back to capitalism. So, to answer your question, Bread Bunny, because I do want to do honor to this, Michael Hudson is the guy you want to look at. Michael Hudson has done several speeches and several lectures on this very issue. I think he's very concerned about the collapse of the dollar. And frankly, like, I don't know, you can clip what I'm just about to say, which is the entire rest of the world is building an organization called BRICS. Saudi Arabia, China, Russia, Africa, South America are all trading off the dollar. They're starting to trade off the dollar. This is, by definition, a challenge to the United States dollar hegemony. By definition. And the rest of the world is going to look at the United States and say, why should we buy your dollars? And the answer is going to be, they shouldn't. Which is going to make the value of the dollar plummet. Like, you don't need to do like a big thesis dissertation to see that this is true. You just need to understand a couple of basic things. And the basic things are that the United States empire is predicated on the financialization of the international trade organizations, that everyone has been forced to trade on the dollar through military force, right? And now that's stopping. Like, that, it's actually very simple. It's not a difficult thing to understand, right? It's not a difficult thing to understand. That, like, the only reason the United States has managed to maintain its economic hegemony is because it militarily forced everybody to trade on the dollar. And there was nothing anybody could do about it, right? And if people started to trade off the dollar, like Saddam Hussein attempted to trade in the euro. Well, why do you think they got rid of Saddam Hussein? Like, they've always understood that the true power of the American empire is the reality that everyone had to trade on the dollar. Everyone was trading on the dollar. It was the same with the British Empire. Everybody had to trade on the sterling. And then when the sterling collapsed and was replaced by the American dollar, well, that was the end of the British Empire. Same story is going to happen here. The same story is going to happen here. And it's going to be sooner than you like. A lot sooner than you like. Yeah, Ligon disease. They don't have a materialist analysis, and they're raised to ignore capitalism. Yeah, and it's such a like lowbrow way of looking at relationships and at looking at the quote unquote battle of the sexes. It's just this like bitches be crazy kind of attitude, and it's just so stupid. Like it's the bottom of the basement. It's the bottom of the drawer, right? And like there are things I feel that women and men are both doing that are that are like incoherent, that don't make a lot of sense. But I feel like once you put it in the place of living in the world of capitalism, it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense why people would act the way that they're acting. It's just it only makes sense in capitalism. It doesn't make sense in reality, or it's incoherent in the human world where humans live. Command Genius says, I was in another stream a few days ago and they were laughing at right-wing manosphere fascists. Yeah, good. I'm glad to hear that. Because, like, the Andrew Tate thing was very exposing, I felt. Like, literally, if you're still an Andrew Tate person, you are a fascist. Like, I don't think you can defend yourself anymore. Like, if you're literally standing there being like, I love Andrew Tate, you're a fascist. Like, we're done here. Like, the guy was literally a sex trafficker, like a rapist. Like, what are you doing? Watson, liberal bourgeoisie feminism has ruined feminism. The originators of International Women's Day were socialists. Look up the writing of Emma Goldman, yeah, Lucy Parsons, Alexandra Kollontai, yeah, exactly, I think you're right. And like, it's, I do think that it's turned into this and oftentimes when men discuss it, they discuss it as like man-hating feminists is what they'll say. But it goes both ways, that there are plenty of women-hating men in the conversation. And the reality is those people are elevated in the discourse. Because if you stand up and say, hey, men and women should bind together to fight against the system of capital that's oppressing them both, well, then you don't get a seat at the table. And that's straight up the truth. You don't get a seat at the table. You're not going to sit around with all of the strippers that Snecko and Destiny sit around with. You're not going to be invited to the party. You're not going to be brought on CNN. You're not going to be brought into any of these conversations if you're going to say men and women have a common ally or a common enemy who they should ally against. And they should realize that a lot of the difficulties that men and women are experiencing with one another is actually a byproduct of the system of capital itself. That it isn't that women be crazy. It isn't that men be evil. Like it is that the system of capital is creating a structure that is making us behave in a certain way because that makes sense to behave in that certain way. That you can't actually be a human being. You can't actually just live your fucking life. You've got to act like a fucking sociopath. And if you're acting like a sociopath in an environment where humans want to be loved, have compassion and empathy for one another, but in order to survive in the world, you've got to act like a fucking nihilistic psycho. Well, then, yeah, you're gonna have problems creating relationships with each other. Like, it seems pretty straightforward. Yeah, it ain't women be crazy, it's money be crazy. I tell you what, I think that's right. Hold on. It was more than free 3 years ago. Now they nickel and dime. More free years ago. Now they nickel and dime. The thing about online dating services, there's a profit incentive to keep people single. That's always what I've said, Major. Like, it's completely outside the interest of the dating companies to get people to not be dating, right? That if the matchmaking works, then you're out of business, right? Then you don't. What you want is you want people perpetually dating. Right? So, like, hookup culture. Like, why do we think hookup culture has really arisen? Well, it's because we're completely disincentivized to actually put people together and have them actually live in a stable environment. Like, instability is the truth, right? Atomic Heart reviews aren't too positive. I don't know what Atomic Heart... You know what? Speaking of this, if you want to talk about media... Over half of Ontarians plan to cancel Netflix over password sharing crackdown. Netflix is over. It's done. Like, cancel your Netflix now. It's finished. They're not going to recover. Like they have made an incredibly terrible decision, and it's going to destroy them. This is what's hilarious about these capitalists. Like, how many times do we need to watch these capitalists actually blow up their own game? Like, all Netflix had to do was nothing. Like, it just needed to kind of keep plugging along and just accept that, like, oh yeah, number's not going to go skyrocketing up like it always has been, but number, right? Number is good, but that's not how these companies think or work or operate. Milo, dude. I know. You want to play. Where's your toy? Where's your toy, buddy? Where's your toy? Where's your toy? Milo wants to play, dude. I'm going to tell you right now. In capitalism, if you've seen like an economic or financial liability, first and foremost, then it follows that no one wants to date that person. It's a money risk. Yeah, that sucks, but it's reality. I genuinely don't think I could afford to date someone that I'd have to pay for everything or spot them. Yeah. Like, it's the lamest shit. And then everybody's like, why aren't you having any kids? Like, why are nobody having any kids? Like, what do you think? Watson says that's the heart of many socialist feminist writings, that is men and women who should fight together against the system that creates things like the division of labor in the home. Yeah. I don't know what Atomic Heart is, dude. How bad do you think it'll get when the dollar drops? Bad. Bad, dude. Like, bad. When the dollar drops, like, it is... Here are some ideas. These are just thoughts. This isn't guaranteed. But these are ideas where things could get very serious. Like, we as Westerners and as Americans are going to lose our ability to buy goods on the world market, right? Like we're not going to be able to interact with the world market in the same way, because the world market is going to say, well, okay, we're going to give you those goods, and no, we're not going to give you those goods for dollars, which is what we've always been doing. Because the idea was, oh, we give you those goods, we take your dollars, and then we take those dollars to get other goods. But now they're just going directly to the source. So instead of Venezuela trading on the dollar with America, and then China trading on the dollar to get those goods from Venezuela, now Venezuela and China are just trading directly with one another with their own currency. And so basically America, this entire time since post-World War II, has been just a big, enormous middleman. Oh, look, capitalism inserting itself as a worthless middleman, as it always does every time, right? So capitalism is a worthless middleman. America has been a worthless middleman this entire time. And in this period of multipolarity, the capitalists are being cut out. They're being cut out. And it's not insignificant, the stuff that's happening. Like, I had it. It's probably in China recently put sanctions on Raytheon and Lockheed Martin over this whole balloon thing. And so they're putting sanctions now on America. They're putting sanctions on American companies. And that's going to continue. And so America is going to be put into a position where it's not going to be able to have access to goods in the same way, because America produces nothing of value whatsoever. Nothing of value whatsoever. And nobody wants what America sells, because America sells nothing. America has no manufacturing base. It deindustrialized itself. It can't create anything. It doesn't know how to. It literally would need to begin the process of building a manufacturing base now in order to compete in the world. Like, and when I'm talking about, like, we're not going to be able to get access to goods, I am talking about stuff like coffee, chocolate, stuff that we genuinely and generally take for granted. That, like, vanilla, like actual vanilla, right? Like, we're not producing vanilla. Like, we can produce like a vanilla extract that's or not an extract, but we can fake it. Like, we could create like a fake vanilla. But vanilla actually comes from like a very specific region of like Mexico, if I'm not mistaken, or South America somewhere. I forget exactly where. But it's not us. We don't make it. We import it. And we import it, and what have we always paid those people in? Dollars. And they're going to turn around and they're going to go, I don't want dollars anymore, because I can't buy anything with dollars. Because China, Russia, India, the manufacturing base of the world, the people who are making everything, are no longer interested in getting dollars. So, like, will the average working class even have a chance at staying housed or fed? Are we going to see people pushing wheelbarrows full of cash for bread? Yeah, all of that will happen. Like, all of this is happening. It's going to happen. Like, and I don't think it can't not happen. It can't not happen. It's like written in the stars. The question is when, not if, but when it's going to happen. And the people who are in charge of all of this kind of stuff just seem to be oblivious to it. Seem to not really give a shit. Because it's not really going to affect them. Because they're still going to live in their mansions. Oh my God, dude. Sorry guys, my dog is freaking out. Okay, Milo, I'm going to give you like a little bit of kibble. Just to shut you up, dude. Holy cow. Here you go, buddy. Here you go. You little fatty. Oh my goodness. Sorry about that. Like and I think the scariest part about what's going to happen is that you're going to see a lot of uninformed, scared people making a lot of very dumb decisions very quickly. Like that's what I think is going to, like the whole Nazi aspect of it, the fascist aspect is one thing. But I think that the actually the more damaging aspect of it for us is that the people who are in positions of power, like, forget about Nazi and fascist, right? Forget about that aspect. They're illiterate morons. Like, they don't care what's going on. And when this all happens, they're not going to know why it's happening. You got people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, right? Like, you got people like Matt Gaetz. Like, all of this shit is going to happen, and it's going to happen so fast, and they're not going to know how to respond to it. And so you're going to have a bunch of illiterate morons who got into the positions that they got into so that they could put a little badge on themselves that said congressperson, right? And do some lobbying or whatever. Actually having to make very serious decisions very quickly, and they're going to make a lot of really dumb fucking choices because they're illiterate morons who don't care to know anything. Like, that's the part about it that's going to be the most damaging. That sure, the Nazi death squads, sure, all that kind of stuff, right? Sure, all this kind of shit. But, like, it's the abject, overt worship of stupidity. I talk about that all the time on this channel, guys. Right? So you hear me talk about it all the time. How much we love being stupid. How much we praise stupidity. How much we elevate stupid people. How much we love to watch stupid people pretend, like, not even pretend to be stupid people, but just act like stupid people. We love it. And if you don't act like a stupid person, you get made fun of. You're a nerd. Like, that's the nature of the society that we live in. And we are going to hit a brick wall. Like Isaac just set up here. Good to see you, by the way, bud. The German chancellor admitted last week there's a multipolar world coming. Right? And, like, if a multipolar world is coming, well, then you need to know things about the other people who exist in it. And we don't. And we're not interested in it. Atomic Heart is Soviet Bioshock meets Far Cry. I bet you it's just propaganda, dude. Like, for real. Like, I don't know why any capitalist would ever make a game like that and be like, yeah, we're actually going to be legitimate about how the Soviet Union was. Like, I bet the anti-Soviet and anti-communist propaganda is going to get really fucking ridiculous. Like, they're going to do, like, a $1 billion video game. Like, that's what I expect to see. What has killed my brain is just taking a look at what liberals and progressives think about geopolitics right now, especially on Reddit. It's demonic. Yeah, exactly. Well, because, yeah, you see these progressives talk like no shit colonizers, actually being happy that the USA has hundreds of bases around the world. Exactly. But that's just it. Like the mask is starting to drop. Like, the mask is starting to drop. And how many times have I said it? We will see our media system produce entertainment that is openly fascist, if not Nazi, that we are supposed to be looking at the protagonist and going, this Nazi is a hero. Like, that's what is coming. That's what's coming. Milo, dude, I don't know what you want. What do you want, my man? Do you just want love and kisses? Do you just want love and kisses? Yes, you do. You just want love and kisses. Just like the rest of us, eh? I think the rest of us could use some love and kisses right now, eh? Milo just wants to give everybody love and kisses. And then he's going to cry about it until he gets his love and his kisses. Yes, I know Milo wants his love and kisses. Milo wants his love and kisses. Yes, he does. What a guy. What a character, man. He's so cute. Milo literally looks at me and is just like, John, give me love. Give me love. Give me love. And he'll just cry at me until I give him love. And then when I give him love, he's like the happiest little guy in the world. Just getting his little scratches. And then when he gets enough love, he's like, thank you. And he licks my face and then goes to sleep. He's such a little cutie pie, man. Jonathan's not giving me any love at all. Oh my God. Milo, we're talking about the decline of human civilization. I know that's a little bit above your pay grade. I understand. You're a dog. You don't know anything. Oh! Buddy, if you're going to cry at me, you're getting picked up. Yeah, and like, I'm seeing that too, Compton. And like, what's crazy to me is how illiterate these people are. Like, they don't care to know anything. Like, they don't care to know anything. And they really have to view people who live in another country as, like, subhuman. It's wild to me. It's wild to me. Yeah, blatant racism and Nazis now pass as progressives. Yeah, especially if you want to genocide Chinese people. I know, it's crazy, dude. Like, it's absolutely crazy. Will suicide rates increase? I don't know how it stops. Like, I don't know how it stops. Like, it's like people are gonna get, like, the depression is going to spread, and there's just no way that it's gonna improve at all. Because, like, for fuck's sake, guys, look at what's going on in Ohio. Look at the, and it's not really a cover up so much as it is like an ignoring of it. That the ruling class has literally just decided to completely fucking ignore this issue. Just like school shootings, right? Just like Katrina, just like these big hurricanes that come through. Like, our ruling class is literally abandoning us. And it's obvious that they're abandoning us. It's obvious that that's the case. And if that's the way they're going to act to fucking, like, giant chemical explosions that are poisoning water supplies, that are destroying all kinds of people, right? That's the way they're going to act. You need to calm down, buddy. That's the way they're going to act every time. They're going to act that way on every single issue. They're not going to suddenly have like a big come to Jesus moment. They're not going to have a moment where they're going to start to act reasonable. They're not going to suddenly look at what's going on in the world and be like, oh man, we really got to help people. Like, that's not going to happen unless it's actually an election issue for them. Like, that's the hard reality. Like, they're never going to respond to us until we are outside their door. And until that happens, they're going to continue blowing up chemical containers. They're going to continue blowing up huge sections of America. They're going to continue poisoning the air, the water. They're going to continue all of this shit, and then the dollar is going to plummet, and when that happens, they're just going to fucking tell us to get a job. That's what's going to happen. And we're all just pretending like it's not going to go down that way. Like, even though there's all the evidence in the world for it. Like, everything that you need to see is right in front of your face. In very, like, 1 + 1 = 2 sort of ways. It's not like a formula. It's not like a big abstraction. We're just so bombarded with bullshit. We're just so bombarded with bullshit that we're so surrounded in the weeds that it's impossible for some of us to be like, oh yeah, 1 + 1 = 2. Because there's all this, like, shit in our way. It's crazy, man. Milo, no more. Calm down. Yes, it's obvious. The Great Depression in the 2008 had them spike, but we're heading down to one far worse. Absolutely, dude. No, way worse. Way worse. If you can understand why such things would work on reactionary fascistic red states, then you understand intimately what the West does all over the world. Yeah, absolutely. It is, they even use de nouveau DRM, a DRM that destroys the game's performance to keep the game safe from pirates. Yeah. The game was made in Russia. Like, Russia's not exactly a communist bastion. There's like 3 different editions for the game, if it isn't obvious enough. No. People should start to look into the protests going on in Israel. I guess what's going on there. Presumably they're also, quote-unquote, anti-Semitic. I don't know about the protests going on in Israel, dude, but like Israel's just like a catastrophe. Like, it's a constant catastrophe. I can't, like... It's unbelievable to me that, like, I think about some of the interviews that Abby Martin did when she went down there, and the conversations that they were having was like pretty it's pretty horrifying. How people were just like openly saying like, yeah, like these Palestinians are parasites, or we need to destroy them. It's just like crazy to think about that. Bread Bunny says, so when this collapse is coming and the empire responds with war, which it will, even if it will be less catastrophic in Canada, how are we to survive? Can we prepare? We just try not to die when we lose everything. I mean... This is why it's important for us to get tied to non-political, like third-party, mutual aid organizations. Like, mutual aid is the way it's going to go. Like, we are going to need to be tied to structures that are outside of the ruling class system. Like, we're just going to have to do it. And, like... When I say we're going to have to do it, I'm literally like, oh, do you want food? Like, do you want to get access to these goods? Like, you're going to have to do it. Because the capitalists are showing during this period of time, like, they're more than happy to triple the cost of your food. They're more than happy to do that. Like, Loblaws and Galen Weston has literally been doing that. And I'm seeing, like, people who I used to follow on TikTok who literally were just like, hey, let me tell you a funny little story, are now like, hey, this is the price of food now. Like, and it's becoming like a very serious issue that all of the political class is ignoring. All of them. The NDP are ignoring them, the Liberals, the Conservatives, like everybody's just ignoring it. Because that's the way forward for the political class. Just ignore it. Or just ignore it. Kill any party that could rise up, like actively work against it and thwart them at every point, so that we don't actually have anybody like an actual socialist party show up or an actual communist party show up, and then just ignore the issues that actually matter. Just like straight up, that's what we're doing. It's right in front of us, and it's going to lead to like big implosions, big implosions. Like, get connected to mutual aid. Get connected to, or like, I know, I talk to people who I take seriously, and they're like, yeah, maybe I will buy land up north. Like, maybe we should just start homesteading. Like, we really should just start planting some potatoes and just like get out of this place. You know, like like the Ohio derailment really made some people I know in my life get very much like, oh, these guys will literally blow us up. Like, literally, they will blow us up and abandon us. Which is exactly what they did to East Palestine. They literally blew that town up and abandoned them. Literally. And the people of that town are basically put in a position of like, well, stay and just die of cancer. Or bail. Get out of here as fast as possible. And the toxic chemicals they spewed into the atmosphere, right? It had a plume. Like, it went somewhere. It went up here into Ontario and into Toronto, in fact. It's possible that I'm breathing some of that right now. Like, and this dawning realization that members of the public are starting to have, that like, it's every man for themselves. That if you're working a job that's connected to, in some way, to this capitalist system, it really is only a matter of time until you get blown up. Like, literally blown up. That a train is going to derail a mile away from your house. That a plane is going to crash. That some dam is going to break. Some piece of infrastructure is going to break. That something is going to happen that's going to cause significant and serious problems for your personal health and well-being. And they're already filling us with microplastics. The sperm count in North America is already fucking dropped in half. Like, we're already living in this absolute, utter catastrophe. This major, massive health crisis. Like where everybody's fucking fat, and the response to it is don't fat shame. Instead of, hey, how about we stop letting psychopaths feed us trash? Literal garbage. How about that? How about we insist that our food is actually good? No, I'm beautiful anyway. No, you're fucking not. You're fat. Sorry. And it's not your fault. You're being fed literal garbage made by corporations. But, like, don't fucking delude yourself. Like, this is what they're doing to us. They're trying to fucking convince us that it's all okay and that we should all just, like, be okay with being fucking fat and overweight when we shouldn't be. We should say, no, we're fat and overweight, and we know why, because you're feeding us trash. Because everything that comes out of these places is loaded with plastics and garbage. And we're all just supposed to be like, yeah, I'm fabulous. Fuck you. Fuck you. Like, fuck these people. Fuck these psychopaths that rule us. And if you think that they're not going to do it to you, just you ask the people of East Palestine. You ask the fucking people of East Palestine. You ask the people of Lytton. You ask the people who have been the victims. You ask these people who have experienced the cold, dead eyes, the Sauron stare of capitalism as it implodes their lives for money, what they think of it. Whether they feel protected. Like, we are having this enormous crisis of imagination where we simply refuse to imagine the idea that we are getting fucking abandoned. Like, it feels like we're all being put in little rowboats and pulled behind a larger boat. And we're all being told, everybody get in the rowboat, it's fine. We've got to, like, do repairs or whatever on the big boat or something. We're all just like, oh, okay. Let's all get in the rowboats. Yeah, okay. We're all in the rowboats getting pulled behind. This is fine. This is normal. We're all in this together. Right? And then one by one, we're watching the rowboats get cut off. That they're cutting the rowboats off, and we're watching a rowboat just float out into the ocean while we're still being pulled behind. And we're going, oh, that's weird. Oh, that's weird. And then one day it happens to you. And you're going, what? What? That's what it feels like right now, what we're doing. That we're just like blindly going towards a total catastrophe that's right in front of us, that anyone can see, that's obvious to see. And when we hit that wall, most of us are going to go, what? What happened? What happened? What happened? There have been several well-attended anti-government rallies in Israel over the last 3 weeks against Netanyahu government and its far right. Is the Israel protest pro-Palestine, or is it against the weakening of their courts? It seems to be both. Grinning says, EP train was scheduled to come within a few blocks of me. It's going to Conway, which is a few blocks from my family, too. Didn't change my opinion, though. We're all in the crosshairs, man. Like, we're all in the crosshairs. And it's going to get crazier. Like, they're not doing anything about it. Like, that... Like, think about that. Like, really, really think about what that means. Just like the school shootings, right? They literally poured like vinyl chloride into the atmosphere, poisoned like a watershed, poisoned the land, right? Ruined a bunch of people's professions. Like, nobody's going to buy that food. Like, nobody's buying food from those farmers. That's over, right? I'm not eating that corn, right? And, like, they absolutely destroyed all of this. And they're not doing anything about it. They're not repairing the rails. They're not even changing the designation of vinyl chloride. They're not even saying it's dangerous. Like, we are at war. That capitalism, the capitalists, are at war with the nation. That they have separated from the nation, and they are at war with us. They're blowing us up with weapons. Like, what do we need to see? Urban Chaos Girl, good to see you. Hello to you as well. I've always loved your name, by the way. I don't know if I've ever told you that. Urban Chaos Girl. That's a very sexy name. It just evokes, like, very cool imagery of just, like... It's a very e-girl kind of a name, let's be honest. Let's be straight. Let's be straight. And I'm here for it. I'm here for it. I need any smile I can get. And then the thanks with little X. Come on. Come on, Urban Chaos Girl. Come on. You're killing me. You're killing me. You've had it since AOL, like, 1999. Nice. Nice. So you're like hipster e-girl. You're like, you were an e-girl before it was cool. All right. I'll get off of this. Jesus Christ, man. I need some laughs, man. I need some laughs. I need some smiles in my life. This fucking, it's too intense. It's too fucking intense. It's too fucking intense to be, like, living in this fucking world and, like, and this fucking job, it makes me a very intense person. It makes me a very intense person to deal with in public and in reality. And I don't know what to talk about with people. I don't know how to just talk about nothing the way that everybody does. Dude, it's so nice, though. I have conversations with people, and it's very obvious that they just want to talk about nothing. And I don't care to talk about nothing, but if there are two people with me, so if I'm in like a group of three and they're talking about nothing, it's actually really nice. It's actually really nice. It's like soothing in a way to just listen to people talk about just fucking things that don't matter at all. I hope I can do that one day. I hope it can happen for me. Ugh. Yeah, I'm glad to give you some smiles. I need some myself sometimes. No kidding, eh? No kidding. Retro e-girl, yeah. Wasn't the crux of the sold-out railroad's attempt at a strike, namely proper time and of workplace safety? Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right, Watson. And I've seen, I saw a fellow who actually confronted the governor of the state of Ohio and said exactly this at like a meetup, like at a town hall. And the guy basically was like, I'm not going to address that. That's a separate issue, right? He was just trying, we're not here to politicize. We're here to deal with the people. And it's like, get completely fucked. And what's embarrassing about it is like, there's no real challenger. Like, there's nobody that's going to dethrone this guy, right? That like corporate money has basically ensured that this guy's seat is completely safe and this is who he's going to be. He's going to be here. And it's just going to keep going down this way. Because the American system has failed. It's a complete failure. Like, it's an utter failure. It's not capable of reform. Because what's happening, as far as the capitalists are concerned, it's just part of doing business. Yeah, sometimes you just gotta poison an entire state. Right? That's all. Right? We got shit to make here. Come on. We gotta transport these chemicals. The cause of the derailment is still out. There was a burning wheel bearing brakes, which supposedly contributed in some way, but they're making up their official story. Yeah, I mean, if you actually talk to any of the railway workers, they say pretty plainly that the inspections aren't. They're not being given enough time. They're not being given enough time to do inspections, and so inspections are happening hastily, and they're obviously sending out stuff that's in need of repair or broken. Like obviously, that's what's happening, and there's film footage of that axle brake issue going on in at least 20 minutes before the derailment. Norfolk Southern had the hot boxes disabled that would have let that show up and stop the train. Yeah, like, this is evil shit we're talking about here. This is the type of shit that, like, some sort of evil, like, they obviously wanted something to happen. I think the craziest part about this is that these guys are going to get bailed out. Like, that's the craziest part, if you ask me. It's going to happen. That, like, they're going to poison everybody, and then they're going to be given $1 billion. Like, that's how this system actually fucking works. It's bonkers. Like, it's bonkers. Ugh. I don't have that many articles to actually look at, guys, because like I like literally got home, put up some stuff from the Discord, and like sat down and started talking. Yeah, they're talking about faulty heat detectors. It's perfectly plausible that the train derailed after braking, though, meaning the normal procedures resulted in tragedy. Yeah, just last year, Biden denied rail workers sick days off. Well, and he broke the strike. Like, he broke the strike. That the workers were trying to strike specifically over these sorts of issues, and Biden broke the strike. This is worse than Katrina. This is like this kind of scale of negligence. It's incredible to watch. The most incriminating part of this is still their controlled burning. How do they get away with this without the whole nation taking to the streets? Because I just think we're so beat up, man. Like, we're so beat up that, like, it's interesting to see what does spark that kind of thing. Like the George Floyd protests, right? Like, nobody expected to see that. Nobody expected to see the fury from the George Floyd execution, right? Like, that was unexpected. And that's usually how these things kind of go, is that they're just unexpected. And so, like, this kind of issue is going to build up and become like usually the trigger event for larger protests and larger things is actually something quite small. It's usually how it does work. That, like, a big event like this is like a trauma that gets seared into our brains, and that we get hit with it. But there's usually like a straw that breaks the camel's back. That's just like, it's so like the George Floyd execution was so outrageous and audacious, and it was the audacity of it that I think really kicked people up. I really fucking kicked people up. Whereas like something like the Ohio thing, it's like, oh, everybody's confused and what's even happening, and oh my god, what's going on? But it isn't like a literal spit in the face. Although I disagree, I think it is a literal spit in the face. But if you don't know what's going on, right? Yeah, it's not that they wanted something to happen, it's that Norfolk Southern has depraved indifference to something happening, because it happened on a small rural throwaway town in Ohio. If that had happened in Chicago, the response would have been magnified. But, like, would it have been? Like, really? Would it have been? That they could have just as easily, like, not talked about it. Just not talked about it at all. Yeah, Bread Bunny, if you're in the Discord, you can put anything in the Discord and tell me to read it, dude. Like, if you've got, like, a longer sort of thing or a bigger kind of comment or something that you don't want to bother putting it into YouTube, you go ahead with that. Just put it in the general, okay? That'll make it. And then tell me when you're good, and I'll take a look at it. Because I want to be able to help out people who are my regular contributors and Discord members and things like this. I sometimes feel like I'm not doing enough for people on Discord. I feel like people are giving me money and you're giving me your support monetarily, which I really, really value. And I sometimes worry that I'm not doing enough, that I could do more. Although I don't know what, honestly. And I'm fucking exhausted. Just trying to survive this. Just trying to survive this fucking catastrophe. You know? Just really surviving the catastrophe. And you know what I'd really like in my life? You know what would be a really beautiful thing? And what I say in my prayers is I say, the one thing that would make my life better would just be if there was somebody who I could come home to who would give me a hug and who I could snuggle up on the couch with, maybe just watch an hour of TV before going to sleep. That would be nice. That would be nice. Sounds so simple, doesn't it? Sounds so easy. Human beings, man, we are not simple. Well, I don't think that's true, actually. I think human beings are simple. I just think that everything's been made complex. Everything's been made complex. And it seems as though it's been made complex on purpose. That if things were simple, we would understand what's happening to us very easily because it would be simple. We would see it and it would be easy. And so the strategy of our owners is now to make things so obtuse and complex and difficult to parse on purpose. Like, I think like modern economics is like this. That like economics has become its own language and its own structure of communication. That in order to parse what's being said, like I have listened to a lot of lectures and information, and I've read a lot about economics to discover that what is happening in the economics departments in North America is a intentional attempt to obfuscate and make complex that which is simple. And it's obviously intentional. Like it really is obviously intentional. That and if you don't play the game, like if you this is what's funny is that I think it could have started with intention, but now it's gone so far along, generation by generation, that the people who are in power actually believe what they say, even though what they say is nonsense. Like utter, complete, total, easy to falsify. Like easy to falsify. Like somebody saying 1 + 1 = potato. But if you don't say 1 + 1 = potato, you don't end up in the position of power. You don't get promoted. You don't get put into the position that you're in. And like this is why I think what's going to happen to America is absolutely a catastrophe. Is that not only are all the people who are in the positions of power illiterate, like staggeringly illiterate, they're the people that they have trained, i.e. the next generation of people who are coming up, are themselves also staggeringly illiterate. And proud of it. Like proud of their illiteracy. Like looking at people who have actually read Marx going like, what? You read a book? Like that kind of illiteracy. Just stunning to see. And it expands into the geopolitical sphere. That the people who are attempting to destroy Russia and destroy China don't know the first thing about these places. Like they literally don't know the first thing about these places. And Diego, good to see you, bud. They don't know how the government is structured. They don't know the history of the country. They don't know anything about what the culture actually thinks and how the people actually think. They don't know anything about these places that they are seeking to destroy. And it's going to be their undoing. Yet they think they can wish 800 tanks into being. Like I keep listening to people who have been interacting with State Department officials and interacting with the quote-unquote diplomats of these situations, and coming out of those situations being like, these people don't know anything. They genuinely are saying like Putin is Hitler. Like that's what these people are genuinely saying. And they don't know anything about what's actually going on in the conversation whatsoever. It's like, to me, that's the most concerning part of all of this, is that the people who are in charge are purposefully and intentionally illiterate and it looks like it's on purpose. That, like, if you know things, you're worse off. You're a worse leader if you know things and are intelligent and understand how the world works at all. And, like, I think that that's pretty ubiquitous. Like, George W. Bush was the president of the United States saying, we're going to go on a crusade against, like, fucking, what are you talking about? Like, what are you fucking talking about, bro? Like, and when I get on the apps and when I take a look at, like, TikTok and I swipe around and what's happening to me recently is I'll pop on and I'll see a live stream. I'll see a live stream that swings by. And it'll be some guy being like, Jesus is God, prove me wrong. Right? Jesus is Lord, prove me wrong. And he's got like 1,000 viewers. I'm just like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, what the fuck are you talking about? And you listen to these guys, and these guys are literally saying things like if you say, there's no evidence for your claims, they go, well, that's just an appeal to naturalism. It's possible that these things are real. It's like, I guess so, but it's not very likely, is it? And if I can come up with an alternative explanation for why these things exist, then you should use the alternative explanation. But they've just decided that the book is magic. And it's crazy because they've decided the book is magic, and it really is putting them in a perpetual state of war against Muslims. That's what it is. Like, these guys are fascists. They straight up are just like, Jesus is God, so that they can fucking go and crucify a bunch of Muslims. It's wild. There's a reason they tell you not to read Marx, Engels, Lenin, and Trotsky. It's very incendiary to the perceived natural order and points a way out. Yeah. Like, absolutely. Like, but what's even crazier, if you ask me, is that it's not just Marx, Engels, Lenin, and Trotsky. It's also Adam Smith. Like, it's also Adam Smith. Like, they have to pick and choose what they quote from Adam Smith. They can't literally just go, let's rename the show The International Freedom Report. Talk like this, see how many people you can rope in. Yeah, dude. I don't think dishonesty is how I want to go about this. I think I want to approach my life with honesty. Thanks, though. Yeah, Putin is Hitler is just an attempt at social conditioning to prepare a populace for war. Putin is terrible, but he's not Adolf Hitler. Yeah. Yeah, they say Jesus is God, but what they really mean is I am God, or God thinks like me. Yeah. Did you see the video I sent on the Discord about the DPRK? I wasn't able to watch it, Command Genius. I honestly just haven't had the time, dude. I've literally been working and sleeping. With, like, maybe a half hour to, like, play a game or something. Bread Bunny, as I promised. Ooh, that's a bit of a chunk, but that's okay. Let's read it. Bread Bunny says, I hope you know I've taken some of your advice to heart. Oh, we must be really desperate, Bread Bunny, if that's what's happening. I talk to my community members all the time about my analysis of society, which you've largely helped influence. I'm glad to hear that, bud. It's nice because as my arguments have become more and more soundly founded and directed, I've been having easier times building upon others' ideas constructively, and we largely get along politically and ideologically. See, this community of which I belong is basically a queer orphan community of troubled and desperate but well-spirited youth. On big days, it's up to a turnout of about 30 people, so I've been propositioning many of them of their help, asking if they'll be willing to help me disperse flyers, stand with me if I start doing public talks, or even join in disruptive protests. The biggest thing I want to start with, though, is that I want to design simple, easy-to-consume leaflets that point towards class awareness and just basically point out that the emperor has no clothes. I just think most people don't ever get to see. Sorry. I'm just so happy that I'm able to. I'm just happy I'm moving that needle, man. That's all. I'm just happy I'm moving that needle, you know? The isolation is the worst part. By a long shot, that's the worst part. I've tried to play the ignorance is bliss game before, you know, and it makes it much worse for someone like me. You know? You can go for a little while, but you run out of steam eventually. And so reading this it's stirring some shit up in me, because just to know that somebody's listening to what I'm saying and then doing something. Just doing something about it, you know? Huh. It really matters to me, you know? It really matters to me. It matters to me that... Because it's so easy to fall into a place of despair, and it's so easy to become a nihilist, and it's so easy to become a doomer and all that kind of stuff, and like... And there's a... You know, and it's easy to want to feel like you're going to quit. And you're just going to try to live your life and bury your head again. And it's just nice to know that I'm not alone, you know? That's all. It's nice to know that I'm not alone. Like I try to be detached from what's happening in the world, you know? I try to do that because I think that that's important, frankly. It's you can't be emotionally invested all of the time to everything that's going on, but it has an effect. And so reading this is just like, it's just nice to know that I'm not screaming at nothing. I'm not screaming at a brick wall. That somebody is out there hearing it, and it's making sense to someone, and that they're going, you know what? We can do these things. We should do these things. We have to do these things. So it's just a blessing. It's just a blessing. That's all. You know, I know that I'm like a little storm cloud. That's the truth. One of the things that I'm really noticing as I'm trying to get into the dating scene, I was talking about this before, it's like so many people are living such a beautiful life. Their life just looks like it's sunshine and rainbows and happiness and smiles and friends and beautiful food and adventure and love everywhere around them. And I'm like a little storm cloud. Just... And I don't think I can ever stop. I don't think I can ever not be that little storm cloud. Oh. The biggest thing I want to start with, though, is that I want to design simple, easy-to-consume leaflets that point towards class awareness and just basically point out that the emperor has no clothes. I just think most people don't ever get to see serious subjects being seriously acknowledged in public, that it's become a taboo to make serious statements, and most have learned to adapt to and inherit the same proper ignorance. I believe ego death is the only way to fully tear down denial that is deeply ingrained and concretely developed. I do, however, believe that it's possible to eventually leave cracks in their denialism, whereby bits of class influence can penetrate the individual's subconscious. Through repetitious exposure to something that disregards and counteracts their denial, seeds can be planted in their intuition. Seeds which will wait for a change in the individual's surrounding conditions to kick their journey out of rootage by when these seeds play an influence into their direction forward. Possibly even guide them towards the hard clashes between reality and self needed for a metamorphosis of perspective to sprout, where immutable ignorance once stood firm. I think some dadaistically unapologetic flyers prompting angry class tones spread everywhere consistently over even just a whole summer might make such an impact in many people's lives down the road. This has morphed from an idea to a dream to a goal. I hope to get some out soon, especially after the snow melt. I'm already putting together unrestrained political comic ideas and ideas for information leaflets. Some literally might just be big print catchphrases like, "Okay, boomer," "Every bailout is a failure," "Was a really good one too," "I might steal." I also hope to put down some kind of social contract link to direct people who are inspired or of agreement attached to the bottom of every printout page. Would you appreciate if I were to add a reference of your YouTube channel name to the bottom of each one as well? I figure it'll help out your goal of expanding your channel's reach while also trying to connect people to information. A lot of these flyers I'm thinking of gluing into business doors or windows, inside malls and other places where it's not really allowed to be, or may be considered petty vandalism. And I wouldn't want you taking down via association. What do you think? You can go right ahead with that, bud. You can go right ahead with that. Thank you, Command Genius. I appreciate it. If the BBC reported on the Queen's death as they do the DPRK, that's hilarious, dude. Milo. That's a beautiful letter you just wrote, bud. I appreciate that, Bread Bunny. That was very sweet. That was very kind of you to write. Oh. Every little bit counts, you know. Everything counts at this stage. We have to start showing people, we have to start in any way that we possibly can, rebuilding a culture. Building, and I never want to call it a counterculture. Because what we're living in is the counterculture. That this is a death cult that is actively attempting to destroy everything around it. It is the antithesis of culture. That what we need to do is rebuild and build a real culture. And because there is a vacuum, and it is a vacuum, that is literally being filled with garbage. Like dumb remakes, shitty ideas, stupid, taking characters from our youths and trying to reframe them. Just, there is no new ideas. Our culture has completely stagnated and died off. So everything counts at this point. Anything new is good. Anything new is good. So please. And thank you for your letter, Brett Bunny. That was very, gave me a lot of catharsis. That gave me a lot of catharsis. Urban Chaos Girl says, I love the community. It makes me feel less crazy. There you go. Yeah, it's real bad being surrounded by normies telling you you're crazy, right? Like, that's what's really bad about it. Tell me, like, that's been my whole life. Just being surrounded by people who are like, whatever you say, John, until it was finally like, the election of Donald Trump really changed a lot of people and how I get talked to by a lot of people in my life. That it really went from like, okay, John, whatever you say, to like, hey, John, what do you think about all this? Oh, I know, my man. I know, my man. You just want more treats. I know, you want more treats. Yeah, you can't unknow. That's right, Ralph. That's right. John Takehart, the consciousness in the working class is growing. We are at an objective, revolutionary inflection point. Very little else is going to be required to push things over the top. Storm on. He who opens his eyes can never sleep in peace. Once you walk through the crimson looking glass, there's no going back. Happened to me 30 years ago. Oh my goodness. I do hope you're right, Watson. Like, I do hope you're right. I just think that I take a look at how our political, like, we are a very small niche group of people. Like, we're in a very small niche that is constantly, like, this channel has obviously been shadow banned. Like, that's obviously the truth. And the only reason it's growing is because I started doing TikTok streaming at the same time. And I should start doing multicasting and all that, and that's all fine. But, like, communists, and I find other, like, anytime I find any other communist, like Midwestern Marx is one I think about. He's on TikTok. He's had his channel removed off TikTok 7 times. 6 times, I think. He's on his 7th channel. And it's like, they are obviously censoring and blacklisting communists. Like, they're obviously doing it. And if that's the case, then who's left? Whose ideas are going to be used? Do you think it's going to be ours, or do you think it's going to be like the World Economic Forum, who's talking about, like, here's how you control people's minds? Bread Bunny, it's nice to know that I'm not the only one who sees the Emperor has no clothes, is exactly why I've been listening to you for the last couple of years. It's great support. I'm glad to hear that, Bread Bunny. I'm really glad to hear that. Because that's the bottom line, right? Is that there is nothing credible left in this society. Every single aspect of this society, there's nothing worth keeping. Like, perhaps some of the structures should be nationalized and taken over, but like we're living in a culture that was built by slavers and monarchs in order to maintain their slavery and their monarchies. Like, that's what we are living in. And it's obviously having profound impacts on how we exist in the world. Like, the fact that food and shelter is withheld from the populace is absolutely one of the most bonkers things. Like, everybody takes it for granted that that's the case. That food and shelter should be withheld from the populace in exchange for their labor. And everybody just says, that's normal, that's right, that's how you're supposed to live, you're supposed to be that way. And I think that that's fucking insane. Like, these people are walking around pretending like they're the normal ones. Like, it's normal to withhold food and shelter for people unless they work for you. When we literally make so much food that we throw away half of it. And we have so much shelter that for every homeless person, we've got 5 empty rooms. We've got 5 empty buildings. Like, there just comes a point where we have to start saying that it's the people who think that this is normal who are crazy. Because it's absolutely the fucking truth. Everyone could have food. Everyone could have shelter. We would be safe and everything would be fine, and it wouldn't be that difficult to do. But we're the crazy ones. All one has to see is what's going on in Europe and the mass demonstrations against austerity, coupled with an anti-war message. We are getting the working class to the boiling point. Yeah, but I mean, like, I just wonder if anything serious is going to happen. Like, the ruling class doesn't give a shit if you go out in the streets. Like, it seems to be the truth. Like, that we are looking at something more serious needs to happen. Like Macron doesn't care. He's not like changing things. Like, they'll let you do your march, they'll let you walk by and wave your little flag. It's going to require more serious and dramatic action at this point. Like, the ruling class is detached and psychopathic. Like, that they're Yeah, they care when general strikes are openly talked about. Like, I really do think that, like, citizens are just going to have to walk into the halls of power. They're going to have to just walk in there and just be like, you're no longer the ruler, get the fuck out. And they're going to have to redraw their constitutions. Because, like, what is happening and what has happened is that a corporate power structure that exists outside of the idea of nation, right? It exists in an abstract way. That the corporate power structure exists above the world economy and above the nation system. And it isn't until there is a wide acknowledgement of this and a declaration of independence from that very structure that anything is going to change. Because as long as you are infected by this demon, you are going to constantly be in its thrall. You're going to constantly be at war with it. And as long as there are capitalist owners that are still infecting your society, you're always going to be in this state of decline. You're just always going to be in this position. There's a reason why we see pseudo-left liberals and open fascists putting on an anti-war rally to rope unsuspecting people in. The ruling class is getting scared about class consciousness growing. I mean, I think you and I disagree about the nature of that rally. I think that there's a lot of American left-leaning people participating at that rally. They care when general strikes are openly talked about, yeah. But, like, to me, I just think it is going to have to be, we're just going to have to take over the means of production. Like, it's not going to have to just be, we're going to withhold our labor. Like, it'll literally be, we are going to continue and make decisions without you. That if the capitalists come in with their cops, we're going to fight back and push them out. And we no longer acknowledge the validity or the power of the capitalists or their cops anymore. Like we're literally talking about building an entirely new society and excluding the previous owners from it. That's the only thing I think is going to work. Really. Like, walk into the factories, work the factories, sell the products, distribute the products, take all of it, and if the capitalists show up and say, where's my cut? You say, fuck off. And I think that's the only thing that's going to happen, that's actually going to work. And when they send in their courts and their cops and all that, you fight them and then ignore them. And I think anything short of that is going to fail. Because these people are psychopaths. And the people who are fighting on behalf of them are fucking fascist losers. Like, these guys are blowing us up with chemicals. Watching our children shoot up places and then shoot themselves. They're poisoning us. They're doing everything. We are in a state of war. And they're not going to stop doing any of that because we get together and hold a rally. We are going to have to walk into the buildings and take them over and ignore what they say. It's going to be what needs to happen. Because anything short of that, they'll just laugh and drink their stuff and fuck our children. Because that's what they're doing now, and that's what they'll continue to do. Like, it is going to take, that is what it's going to take. And anything less than that is just sort of us building our own confidence and building our own organizations. That's all it is. Like, we're not holding a rally to actually get anything done except organize ourselves and say, who's willing to show up to this thing? Who's willing to actually organize this stuff? Well, we got to start asking, who's willing to walk into that building and take it over? That's what it's going to really take. Good evening, Eric. How you doing? Eric says, get this, I was listening to a debate yesterday between Ben Burgess and an ANCAP. The ANCAP literally and openly argued for eugenics. Oh, fantastic. And there were two ANCAPs in the comment section who defended his, yeah. Of course, dude. Right-wing libertarians are just fascists. It doesn't take long to get them to show their true colors. You know, syndicates, permanent strikes. ANCAPs are not anarchists. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, one way is to break out of the straitjacket of the accepted organized labor apparatus. It's not really organized labor, is it? It's just a way to kill organized labor. Recreate the actual Soviets. Transylvanian, hey, nice to catch a stream of yours again. The article by Rayner was, this article by Rayner was really good, by the way. Yeah, I'll probably read this one. Just feeling very, like, tired and emotional, and you don't exclude the former capitalists, you just reduce them to the norm. That's what opens the way for class traders. No, I'm to the point now where I'll happily say that the society would be better off if we just excluded the capitalists. Like, put them in a little corner by themselves and let them do capitalism with themselves if they want. But the productive capacity of the society should be in the hands of the workers. And it's never going to, like, I don't really understand why we are negotiating with these guys. Like, that's the thing that kind of kills me. Like, why are we negotiating with these guys? Why are we pretending like it's a negotiation? Like, these people are worthless, parasitical, fascist psychopaths. Like, they contribute nothing. And the stuff that they do contribute is just waste. Yeah, to do that, take over the levers of power, we need actual organizing with Marxist education. It's true. Well, and if you don't want the Marxist education, then, like, what are you doing here, dude? Like, my name's the Canadian Commie. I am a Marxist. I don't know what to tell you, bud. Let me read this. Why Operation Z is a victory for class struggle. It's shrunk the imperial sphere's extractive reach. This is from Rainer Shea. Whether you view Russia's decision a year ago to intervene in Ukraine as correct from its anti-imperialist perspective depends on which metric you're using in your strategic calculus. When one is only looking at the events from inside the imperialist benefactor countries and the Eastern European countries where Nazi nostalgia has created support for Ukrainian fascism, Operation Z's impacts appear to be overall positive for the forces of reaction. When you look at the wider context and account for the events from the wider globe, it's obvious that Z's impact have been overall positive for the revolutionary forces, and that Z therefore is historically progressive in character. To be able to correctly navigate our conditions, we have to analyze Z and other developments from that wider perspective, from a perspective that's informed by a global, comprehensive way of viewing history. To only look at what's happened inside the parts of the world where the imperialists still solidly control and make judgments about the correct courses of action based on this limited amount of information is to embrace a myopic, analytical framework. An adequate education on our conditions requires a willingness to consider what's happening across the entire globe, in every place where developments like Z are relevant. Only then can we learn the right lessons from these developments. In the case of the Ukraine conflict, a global analysis firstly shows that Russia's decision, made via pressure from the country's communists to combat the fascist menace in Kiev, was strategically sound. Not as strategically sound as it should have been, as Putin made the war harder by refusing to intervene for the first 8 years after the Euromaidan coup, yet still sound enough that it since managed to accelerate the transition to a multipolar world order, and therefore to the post-American order, which communists ultimately seek to replace multipolarity with. Multipolarity is only one necessary step in the process of fully defeating the US empire and of completing the victory of the globe's workers. Z has hastened this process by weakening US hegemony, prompting the vast majority of the world to side against Washington on the Russian question, and thereby rendering the empire more isolated. This has better enabled Russia to both avoid being destabilized by the sanctions and assist China in building a global developmental project which is making neocolonialism untenable. Because of what Russia's communists helped get Putin to do, The peripheral countries are now closer to gaining the economic self-reliance to be able to reject Washington's predatory loans. In these victories for the revolutionary forces on the global scale, which have rendered all the benefits this proxy war has brought the imperialists ultimately not worth the costs of provoking Russia. The expansion of NATO, the further militarization of Europe, the opportunities for corporations to profit from the conflict, the suppression of anti-war voices, the solidification of pro-NATO narratives in our discourse, all of these victories for the empire are hollow. They're hollow because they've been gained in the context of Washington failing to achieve the proxy war's foremost goal, which was to sanction Russia effectively enough that it could be destabilized along with China. Without that geopolitical victory, all the empire's gains from the war are only momentary, coming at the cost of the acceleration of class conflict. Because without the restoration of U.S. hegemony, which Russia's destruction would have brought, the conditions of the core can only continue to become untenable. Amid the decline of neo-colonial profits, our ruling class has to keep imposing more austerity to maintain American capitalism, which produces further discontent among the American people and greater probability of revolt. As revolutionaries in the core, the lesson we can learn from this is that we now pose more of a threat to the ruling class than was the case prior to multipolarity's rise. Our bourgeoisie's system of control has been weakened because it's a system that depends on perpetually expanding its exploitation of the peripheral world. The world insulated within the walls of colonialism and imperialism can't function on its own. It needs to be able to rob the places which it shuts out. Prior to the war, many of these places have already rendered themselves unable to be exploited by adopting socialism. Cuba and the DPRK are the ones most advanced along this communist developmental path and have naturally been some of the biggest targets for U.S. sanctions. With Washington's decoupling from China in the 2010s, to the effect that Vietnam is now America's big Asian manufacturing source, U.S. capital became cut off from the profits afforded by the productive forces that U.S. corporations had given up to China. Then, with the full decoupling from Russia, these corporations further lost market access. They're now losing even more of their extractive reach as the Belt and Road Initiative expands. All that's left is the completion of the BRI and the coming of a new wave of revolution, which will make the empire too weak to be able to persuade countries like Vietnam to stay loyal towards its rules-based international order. Through the Obama-style anti-corruption coup model, the imperialists are still able to delay the liberation of neo-colonies like Peru, but even these kinds of victories for the imperialists are proving also to be hollow, because the global anti-imperialist movement is growing stronger. It's growing stronger because those in the peripheries have no choice but to resist the empire. The empire has been driven them to an unprecedented state of desperation by imposing additional IMF measures during a pandemic, a climate crisis, and a global supply chain breakdown caused by Washington's proxy war. As a consequence, Peru's coup regime continues to be undermined by an irrepressible resistance movement. The unrest is overwhelming. It's made tourist sites have to be shut down and made the State Department's Peace Corps members have to flee the country. The regime is only holding on to control through blunt force, which is never a good sign for the survival of a governance project. Such is the situation that imperial rule finds itself in more broadly. It increasingly can no longer function so much through economic leverage, placating privileged elements of the people, or narrative control. The sanctions have had to rely on sacrificing Europe's economy, and have still been insufficient. The social base of well-paid workers that imperialism depends on is shrinking, as inflation drives down American and European living standards. The Ukraine PSYOP has failed across the peripheral countries, and is at growing risk of failing in the core countries as workers become discontent over the war's impacts on them. Washington's neocolonial states have to routinely massacre their own people to keep revolution from happening, and Washington itself can only keep neo-colonies like Haiti from breaking free by employing military force, a tactic that's long been effective for it, but only when that's not the only tactic available to it. Imperialism works best when it can employ not just hard power, but numerous other means for maintaining the extractive arrangement, from utilizing psyops to letting certain populations share in the imperial wealth. The range within which these tools are effective or possible is shrinking, forcing the walled-in imperial sphere to become even more of an insulated fortress. The fragility of the system we live under has been revealed. As soon as U.S. hegemony became threatened, our ruling class began to worry about the future of its rule. The imperial project is having to remake itself in miniature form, turning Eastern Europe into a new source of extraction by imposing further privatization policies onto it. The exploitation of the core's proletariat continues to be intensified, even after half a century of progressively crueler neoliberal austerity. Depending on how effectively our liberation movements are able to throw off the influence of imperialism's psyops and bring the people into the anti-imperialist struggle, the state will have to maintain control through massive repression. This is what the erosion of civil liberties throughout the War on Terror has been about. The War on Terror was the catalyst for the recent foreign policy failures which precipitated the empire's decline. So the empire has had to contract. Using these same self-destructive militaristic projects as a pretext, our ruling class has created the legal precedents for an undisguised dictatorship of the bourgeoisie, a dictatorship that can only be overthrown by building a mass movement, a movement that's internationalist in nature and connected to the global fight against imperial rule. It's good to know that someone like Rainer's out there writing this stuff, man. That's a good one. That's a good one. We're not cheering Russian imperialism. That's not what this is. That's not what this is, Ralph. Like, Russia needed to defend itself. There's nothing imperialist about fighting back. Like... Capitalists are against education. Everything is based on scarcity and efficiency. Scarce educational resources let them stay in charge of your life. Yeah. Hard to know the end of things, better to stay with what we can do and side with no states. I don't know if I understand that phrase, dude, what you said there. Yeah, Russia is waging an anti-fascist struggle in Ukraine against the imperialists installed Nazi junta in Kiev in defense of the people of the Donbass. There is no Russian imperialism. That's exactly right, Transylvania. Like, that's the cleanest way that you could possibly say it. That, like, it's not that Russia attacked Ukraine because they're like, we got to get those resources and we got to build our empire and all of that kind of stuff. Like, that's what the CIA and what the State Department want you to believe. But that there were literally Nazis shelling ethnic Russians in the Donbass region for 8 years. I'm more or less of the opinion that Putin didn't want to do it. That he had to do it. That the political... The people of Russia themselves, including the communists within the government, would have gotten to a point where they just would have gotten rid of Putin and put in somebody who would have done it. Like, that, I think Putin was brought to it. Like, I don't think he was the one that was pushing to do it. I think he was brought to it. And to try to pretend like what's going on in Ukraine right now is the same thing as what the United States has been doing for decades, if not longer, is kind of strange, frankly. Like, what America does in the world, the American empire, what it does is it spreads out in order to get resources. That's fundamentally what it's doing. This is just constantly in a state of getting resources for itself. That's not what Russia's doing here. That, sure, yeah, there's oil fields in Crimea. Like, sure, there's like offshore oil and all that kind of stuff. Sure. But all of that is beside the whole point that Russia had Nazis shelling NATO-backed Nazis. Like, NATO-backed Nazis shelling ethnic Russians on its border for 8 years. Like, if there were Nazis shelling people on the border of your state, you would be screaming about it. You would be absolutely screaming about it. And you wouldn't call it imperialism if the governor of your state got together a group to fight back against it. You wouldn't say that your governor is acting like an emperor, or is being imperialist, or is trying to like re-erect like the great, I don't know, Oklahoma, whoever. Like, none of that would be real. That what is real is that the Russians are fighting back against Nazis, like they've always done. Yeah, don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Thank you, Grinning. I need to get better at doing that myself. Yeah, Russia's ambitions of imperialism would need to exist first. Absolutely. And John Mearsheimer is a really good source for this. John Mearsheimer, like, here's a guy who's like literally listened to everything Putin's ever said. Like, I've listened to this guy have debates with people, and they'll try to like throw an article or something at him, and he'll literally quote that very article back at them to be like, that's not what he said. That you're just like cherry picking a little moment in that article, but this is what the article actually said. And he's very clear when it comes to Putin. Like, Putin does not have imperialist ambitions. He's not interested in spreading democracy. He's not interested in spreading the goodness of Russia or any of that kind of stuff. Like, he's not trying to do that. He's literally interested in fighting Nazis on his border. Like, that's what he's doing. And it's I don't know, it's a bit, I understand why Westerners want to say this. Like, I understand why. It's so that people can just sort of throw up their hands and be like, all empires are bad. Oh, it's another empire. An inter-empire war is always bad. Right? So that you don't actually have to make a call. You don't actually have to say, like, oh, we're the problem. And we are the problem. Like, America is obviously the problem. And the West is obviously the problem. And we're going to pay for it. It's going to be and it's going to be completely self-inflicted. Like, what happens is going to be completely self-inflicted. Isaac says people in the West knew what was going on in Ukraine but didn't care the same way they don't care about what America does to other countries. Yeah, suddenly they care about Muslims in China. Exactly. Yep, Putin once asked the U.S. if Russia could join NATO. He fell for the Minsk Accords scam and forced the Donbass rebels in 2014 to pull out of Mariupol, which led to a massacre there by the Nazis. He wanted really hard to get along with the West and be integrated into the liberal order. His instincts are fundamentally to avoid conflict. His hand was politically forced. Russians would not have accepted him continuing doing nothing. I think that is exactly right. You're Transylvanian, you're saying that in like a really clear, that is like, I'm so happy that I just read that all out loud, because that's like absolutely the case. Like, if it was up to Putin, like, post-Stalin, it's very clear that the post-Stalinist leaders were trying to move away from communism to try to integrate themselves into the quote-unquote international rules-based order. That they wanted to become part of the West. That, and I don't think I don't want to demonize them. Like, I wish that they had have continued the communist project, but at the same time, I can see why it would be very alluring to instead say, well, why are we pursuing this communist project if it means alienating ourselves from the West and potentially setting ourselves up for another conflict with the West? And when I say the West here, I do mean also Europe, not just America, Europe. Like, the Nazi invasion of Russia was traumatic. It's a massive trauma. They lost 20 million people, more than 20 million people. Like, it's an enormous trauma that was inflicted on Russia. And I really do think, like, if you take a look at like, post-war Stalin is very like it's a rebuilding effort, but the energy of, like, building the communist movement is somewhat depleted by World War II. That the people of Russia and the energy and the exuberance to pursue this idea of communism is somewhat, not completely, obviously, but is somewhat diminished. That they really got they got beat up and they needed to lick their wounds. And I can see how post-Stalin, like when Stalin goes, how other leaders would be like, shouldn't we kind of be sucking up to these guys? Shouldn't we be saying to, like, Germany, France, England, America, like, hey, we want to be buddies, we want to be friends? Shouldn't we extend an olive branch? Shouldn't we go out there and try to amalgamate ourselves with them? And I think they started to do that, and they moved in that direction specifically for that reason, to not get invaded again. And I think that is the trajectory that a lot of but I mean, I think that Stalin's death is the end of, not the end of the Soviet Union, obviously. Like, the Soviet Union ends in the 90s. But it's the end of the real pursuit of any kind of genuine communist project. Like, really. Like, after Stalin, like, Khrushchev's speech post-Stalin, for God's sakes, is like pack of lies that he just absolutely says about Stalin. I think that's done specifically to try to push communism and push the old kind of communist idea out and move towards the left, or towards the West, rather. And and I do think that the goal, certainly of, like, Gorbachev, right, Yeltsin, absolutely, was to do precisely this, was to just eventually amalgamate themselves with the West. And for God's sakes, like, Putin was showing up at, like, the G8, right, which is now the G7, because Russia's no longer part of it. And I think that Putin really did see himself, when he got into power, as continuing that process. I think he wanted to put his hand on the wheel and slide Russia into amalgamating with the West and amalgamating with NATO and amalgamating with the G8 and amalgamating with, you know, all of these sorts of things and becoming friends with these people. Like, I really think that's what he wanted. And it just kind of became obvious that wasn't going to be the case, which really makes Putin a very fascinating figure. Like, he really is a fascinating leader in this period of time. That some really cool, but some really, like, crazy stuff has happened under his tenure. And what I think is really wild about it all is that if it was up to him, I think Putin would have just loved to just slide Russia into the European order, just been another capitalist, working with the rest of the capitalists, being capitalists. I think he would have just been happy with that, just shunking right in there. And sure, he, like, complained about Libya, and sure, he, like, bitched about, and sure, he fought back in a proxy war in Syria, right? But, like, I just think, well, I mean, Khrushchev lied. There's a great book written called Khrushchev Lied, where I forget the author, but he just basically goes through the Khrushchev speech and is like, it's bullshit. And it seems correct. Like, everything I know about Khrushchev is that he wasn't a friend of Stalin's, like, he wasn't a fan. And it just seems to me like once Stalin goes, they just tell a whole bunch of shit. And it just seems pretty straightforward to me. And it seems like they had every reason to want to do that, specifically for the reason I just stated. That, like, they want to get away from this. They want to try to integrate with the West, and they're never going to do that. They're never going to do that if they're lugging around communism, right? There's literally organizations that were built in the West specifically to destroy communism. Like, if they want to be friends with these people and actually have a decent relationship with them, they're never going to do that. And one of the best ways, Stalin's reign of terror. Okay, Watson, like, if Kamala Harris was assassinated, I would expect to see purges. Like, I don't take your point seriously. Like, if a high level American official was assassinated, I would expect something to happen. Right? Like, I find this point to actually be strange. Like, I would expect something to happen if a high level official was assassinated. And I think it's weird that you think otherwise. Like, and even Stalin wrote that those purges like lasted too long and a bit of hysteria set in, right? Well, I don't know what you're doing here then, Watson. Like, I'm not trying to be an apologist. I'm just trying to tell you what I think. Like, this is why Trotskyists are impossible to talk to, Watson. Like, you guys are such hardline fundamentalists. Like, for real. You guys are such hardline fundamentalists. You don't want to listen to anything. Yeah, they were revisionists. It's a simple fact. Khrushchev lied his ass off. Virtually everything he said about Stalin was false. Yeah. Like, it just was false. Like, that's the thing. Like, it's not that it's like, I've got to defend Daddy Stalin. It's just literally not true. Like, and I don't know really what to say about it other than that. Like, Khrushchev lied. There's this great book. Here, let's just look it up. Khrushchev lied. Grover Fur. I listened to a great lecture by this guy. Like, and it's not to say that like I think that Stalin made mistakes and should be critiqued, right? Just like everybody, but like and I've got like my biggest compliment I think that I have for Trotskyists is that they show up and they fight. Like, that's what I find really interesting about Trotskyists. Like, of any kind of ideological position I've had on the well known in Trotskyist circles, certainly. Like, I do find that Trotskyists have gotten a little bit fundamentalist about things. It's difficult to have conversations because everything has just been agreed on already. And if you say like, well, what about this? Well, you can just dismiss it, right? Grover Fur is an unserious Stalinist hack, so you get to avoid all the evidence. You can just ignore it. So it's like any other religious ideology. Like, it's just a closed idea. And so, okay, that's what it is. And I don't really like understand that. Well, I shouldn't say that. I understand why people do it, but I just don't want to do it. I've been there before. I don't care to go back. And if and like, I don't know, it just doesn't seem interesting. Like, you read the works of Trotsky and like, yeah, Trotsky was a brilliant writer, brilliant author, and he was his own worst enemy without a doubt. And like, his idea of permanent revolution is a bit convenient, if you ask me. Either he's the leader of the country doing a permanent revolution, or he's the leader of the revolution against the country that won't let him be the leader. So it's like very convenient sort of a position. And I don't know, dude. At the end of the day, the people chose Stalin. Like, I don't know what to say about it. Like, at the end of the day, the people chose Stalin. Yet there were deeper underlying systemic problems in the USSR. It would be wrong and anti-materialist to try to blame its demise on bad individual leaders and revisionism. These did play a role. I agree with what China's leader said about Stalin issue. Yes, he made mistakes, but the biggest mistakes was discarding his entire legacy. If China had done that to Mao, they would not exist today. I think that that's probably right. That, like, what was it that I think Deng said? It was like 70-30. That like Stalin did like 70% correct, 30% wrong. And I think that analysis is like more or less correct, and I actually do think like someone like Deng is probably in a stronger position to like. I feel like what the Chinese were saying about the Russian leadership at that time is worth listening to, and I just think that it's like, it seems to me that what has happened post the Stalin Trotsky break is like, of course Westerners grabbed a hold of Trotsky, and of course like even Western capitalists would grab onto Trotsky, because Trotsky was basically like talking shit about Stalin. Like, but if I'm going to try to have a serious analysis about what's going on and what happened during that period of time and what's going on around, I'm not just going to take Trotsky's word for it. Like, obviously Trotsky was an antagonist of Stalin's. I think it's the greatest tragedy of the Soviet Union. That I think the Soviet Union would have been stronger with Trotsky in it. And it seems to me that's the lesson. Like, that's what we should be trying to learn. How do we avoid those sorts of fractures? How do we avoid like those sorts of breaks and those sorts of big tragic things from happening in our societies? How do we make it so that when there is a point of decision that needs to be made and one group wins, that this group doesn't just die and break off, that it actually gets amalgamated back into the whole? That, and I don't have the answer to that, but that seems to be the crucial question that Trotsky and Stalin bring to the conversation. And like, Trotsky's just one perspective. He's not like a god. That's what's so weird talking about Trotskyists in a lot of times, is that it's like I'm supposed to listen to this guy and believe that he's like the son of God or something. And I'm just like, but he's not. He's like a nerd. Like, he's a smart guy, but he couldn't sway the people. John, did you read the article about negative liberties that I talked about the other days? I didn't have the chance to, Eric. I've been extremely busy. I've literally been working and sleeping. And now I'm talking about Trotsky and Stalin again. Which I just am like, it really blows my mind that this is still a thing. Right? I just am like, this conflict, this like interpersonal conflict that exists between Trotsky and Stalin, where they obviously hated each other. And they always did. They were obviously rivals right from the beginning. And it's just sort of weird that it's become this like long-standing, like it's sort of odd that while we are fighting against this enormous imperialist death cult army, that anyone at any point would even give two shits about the failed leadership bid of Trotsky. Like, Trotsky wrote some cool stuff, and he wrote some stuff about fascism, and he had some theories about how socialism should be done. And I think all of that is interesting. But at the end of the day, the guy got fucking butthurt because he couldn't win. And so he ran away. That's what happened. Like, the guy lost. The people went with Stalin. And the idea that comes out of the Trotskyists that Stalin somehow led like a dictatorship, a bureaucratic dictatorship, is just butthurt. Like, it is. It's just straight up butthurt. Like, your dude lost. He lost. He couldn't convince the people to go his way. He lost. That's it. And instead of Trotsky going, okay, people went the way of Stalin. They didn't go with my ideas. I should stay with my countrymen, continue fighting the good fight. Right? He just ran off and went wham for basically the rest of his life. Like, Trotsky is hardly blameless in all of this. Like, pride is like, whenever I think of Trotsky, that's what I think. Like, he wasn't a humble person. It's probably a big reason why he didn't win. Like, I just think that the populace didn't care for Trotsky very much. And it's not hard to see why. Like, it really isn't. It's not hard to see why. That, like, the average citizen would probably not look at a guy like Trotsky and be like, that's my guy, let's go Trotsky, right? And it's not like Trotsky's hands are clean either. It just seems to me like the dude, like, wouldn't it have been great if they had have been friends? Wouldn't it have been great if their relationship ended up being more like Goku and Vegeta? Wouldn't that be great? That would have been wonderful. If Trotsky and Stalin could have just been friends and had their disagreements and had their struggles and had their fights, but still move forward with the hopes that they were both trying to help the development of the Soviet Union. It just seems to me to be like one of the great tragedies of communist countries and of Marxism. And I feel like we're just missing the point completely in the modern conversation. That, like, I don't really care to get into this, like, who was right, Trotsky or Stalin. You know who won? Stalin. Sorry. Like, tough. Dude, what are you talking about, Compton? Dude. Metal manufacturing facility in Ohio just explode. Come on, exploded. Are you abso-fucking-lutely kidding me, dude? At least 14 people are injured with burns, including one critically, following explosion at metal manufacturing plant in Bedford, Ohio. Fucking Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Go away. Bedford, Ohio. That's like in Cleveland, basically. Straight up in Cleveland. And where's the, like, fucking right next door. It's like, that's where East Palestine was. That's where the fucking explosion happened. Bro. Like, it's gonna keep happening. It's gonna keep happening. Like, the infrastructure failures are going to just continue happening. And it's going to get more and more serious, and it's going to get more and more deadly. Like, the system is not responding. They don't care. They don't care. Just unfucking believable, man. How are we supposed to fucking take the United States seriously, dude? Like, how are we supposed to take this country seriously? Why should we take this country seriously? Like, I can't imagine fucking any reason why anyone, god damn it, print screen, fucking unfucking believable, dude. This is such fucking horseshit. Like, this is such fucking horseshit. Control C. File. You guys are gonna watch me do this in real time. I don't give a shit. I'm tired and fucking mad and frustrated, and this is so fucking unfucking believable, dude. Like, unfucking believable. Oh, no, cancel. Save as JPEG. Yeah, we're gonna save that as Ohio. Again. Just fucking, what the fuck are you even fucking talking about? That, like, I'll update that on Instagram later. Like, There was the power grid outage in Texas, like literally a year or 2 years ago. Like there's like constant. Remember when the fucking remember when they burnt the ocean? Like, remember where there was that big like hellgate that was just basically spewing out shit? Like, this is getting beyond. This is getting beyond obvious. Like, everything's breaking, everything's falling apart, everything's blowing up. Like, everything's blowing up. The people who are the workers themselves are trying to strike and organize in order to protect themselves and protect everybody around them. And what are their politicians doing? Stopping them from doing it. Like, there seriously comes a point where you have to start saying, like, you are abandoned. Like, I don't know what else needs to be said. You have been abandoned by an oppressive death cult who do not care if you die. They don't care if you die. They don't care. They're completely disinterested in it. I just don't know what it's going to take for these people. I don't know what it's going to take for all of us. Like, get a new job. No thanks. I don't want to die in your death cult. Like, I don't want to fucking... Transylvanian. I guess that's why they go around blowing other countries' pipelines, because they're just jealous when somebody actually still has working infrastructure. Yeah, dude. Watson, I have a guy at work who thinks these events are a conspiracy against pro-Trump states. What? What the fuck, man? Like... think about, like, that's getting caught in the binary, dude. That's what that is. That's just like Democrat versus Republican. Everything's got to cut down to Democrat versus Republican. It's impossible to see. It's impossible to take the one step out and just be like, Democrat, Republican work for the same apparatus, and that apparatus is like, it's just not possible. That you've got to believe that, like, my side's good and their side's bad, and if my guy was in, things would be better. It's like, I mean, I thought that way when I was like 20, I guess. You know? There was a period of my life when I was still just like, we just need to vote for a different political party, and we need to get in there and make sure that our voices are heard and get the right person into the position, right? But, like, you know, then I grew up and I realized, like, oh, these guys all work for the same people. Like, they're all... for, like, they're not interested in helping us. Like, they're completely disinterested in it. You're loud. You're loud. You're loud, eh? You're real loud. Alright, guys, I'm gonna call this one early. I'm fucking tired, and I gotta go to work again tomorrow for some reason, so... I am going to call it 20 minutes early. That's fine. We're going to be doing the TikTok stream tomorrow, which is going to be a thing. Always remember, guys, each and every one of you is a quantum being walking around in quantum energy. Oh, ask me tomorrow, dude. The thing, the other thing, and the other thing. Good luck, guys. We're gonna need it.